Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, we're going to begin the funeral services of Herbert N. Rosen DDS. I'd like everyone to take a moment now to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off, not to disturb the ceremony, and Rabbi Michael Schwab from North Suburban Synagogue Bethel will be officiating. Please note the Shiva information is on the service folder. It'll be at the Korab Derman residence. I did make a mistake, and I apologize. On Friday, it says from 6:30 to 8:30. We know that there's no Shiva between 6:30 and 8:30. So the website has been updated, so new folders have been made. But please note on Friday, it's only till 4 p.m. Memorial contributions to the Friends of the IDF or the Jewish United Fund would be appreciated. That information is on the folder. And for those of you who are joining us online, that information is on the funeral home's website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing a car in the back of the procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. Please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to the cemetery. In just a moment, the family is going to be entering the chapel. When they do, everyone will be asked to rise, and they'll be seated as one community. And then we're fortunate and humbled to have the United States Navy to do military honor guards to present the flag to his children. Please rise.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for us to be here today to honor your veteran. If able, please rise during the flag tags.
Once again, we want to thank the representatives from the United States Navy for the military honors. This time, Rabbi Schwab will begin the religious part of the service.
In memory of Herb Rosen, I'm now going to recite from Psalm 15, a psalm about a man of integrity, which is one of the many things that he was. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagor bo alecha mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek v'dover emet bilvavo, lo ragal al leshono, lo asal re'ora v'cherpa lo nasal krovo, Nivzeh be'einav nimas v'yatirei Adonai yechabed, nishba la'ara v'lo yamihir, kaspo lo noten b'neshech v'shochad al naki lo lakach, ose ele lo yimot le'olam. Translation: Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter into God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth, have no slander upon your tongue, never do evil to others, do not mistreat your neighbor, spurn those who are contemptible, honor those who revere God, never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm, lend no money at unfair rates, accept no bribe against the innocent, make these deeds your own, you shall stand firm forever. Each one of those phrases can describe Herb. He definitely made those deeds his own. And not only do we believe that his soul stands forever, but his influence on us as it's passed down from generation to generation will also stand forever. Now I'm going to recite from Psalm 23. In your service folder, you have the English. After I recite it in the Hebrew, if you'd like to, you can join me in reciting the English. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binoteh sheyarbitzeni, amei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, Yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeit tzal mavet, lo yira ra ki ata imadi, shivtecha u'mishan techa hema yenachamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan neged tzorai, dishanta v'Hashem en roshi kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed yudefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Please join me if you'd like. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the Talmud it says, Ashrei mi shegadal b'torah v'amalo b'torah v'oseh nachat ruach liyotzro v'gadal b'shem tov v'niftar b'shem tov min ha'olam. Blessed is the one who was reared in Torah, who labored in Torah, who pleased our Creator, who lived with a good reputation, and who died with a good name. And as our great philosopher Ben Sira wrote, when a parent dies who has taught his children, that passing is not a true death. As long as that child lives, and all the more so grandchildren and great-grandchildren, there is a part of that person that will never die. When alive, a parent rejoices with his children. In death, that parent will not grieve, for he knows that his legacy will be passed down the door of Ador from one generation to the next. Speaking of one generation to the next, I'd like to ask Matan to come up and speak about his grandfather. No, do one at a time.
When I was a kid, people used to tell me how special it was that my grandfather had a full head of dark hair. It wasn't until I got older that I realized just how special that was. He experienced the most charmed life that one could possibly ask for. But it was never about him. He rarely did anything for himself. It was always about others. He dedicated his life to making other people happy. Whether it was serving as a dentist on a naval warship, spoiling his grandchildren, or caring for his wife as she battled a terminal illness, he made his life about giving love to those around him. He leaves this world having made the most profound impact on it. Like many, I can say with total conviction that I wouldn't be the person I am today without him. Saba was a consistent source of positivity and support, unwavering and unconditional in the love that he gave. As a kid, I saw him as larger than life, wildly impressive in his accomplishments and his stature, and that never changed. In fact, it only grew stronger. As time passed, I developed true clarity about his unique outlook and the qualities that made him so special. There are a select few people in this world who just make you feel good, and they're universally adored for it. I don't know what exactly it is about them. I certainly don't have it, but Saba, he embodied it to the extreme. Everyone who crossed his path was drawn to him. It was impossible not to be. And if there was ever a man who squeezed every last drop out of life, it was my grandfather. He lived to be 101, which is astounding, but also surprises nobody. Armed with a relentless optimism and lust for life that knew no bounds, he was an unstoppable force. And his message and his values will continue to resonate for generations. He demanded that we understand family is everything. And he built a framework to ensure that the love and support across our family will be everlasting. I recognize what an incredible gift I've been given to have this man as my grandfather. And from this day forward, I commit myself to living a life that embodies his spirit and upholds his principles. I love you very much, Saba.
As we continue to hear from the grandchildren, I'm now going to call on Tali to speak about her Saba.
This was very daunting to write. It didn't really feel like there were any words that could do Saba justice. He was a giant. He was an eternal optimist, a lifelong learner, an ardent lover of Israel, a sailor through and through, the absolute worst secret keeper you've ever heard, and the most proud grandfather, father, and great-grandfather. The last year and so, Saba had been in and out of the hospital with various doctor's appointments, and I was lucky enough to keep him company for some of those, and they all started out the same exact way. The doctor and nurse would come in the room, they would look at his chart, they would see his age, and inevitably ask him what his secret was. Saba was a consummate professional patient at this point, and he had his answer all ready to go. He would say, "Bourbon and loose women." A joke that would never fly when Saba was alive. But then the doctor would laugh, and Saba would say, "But no, really, the secret is family." The doctor would nod and move on, and Saba would look at us and smile. And that's absolutely true. Saba lived for his family. But I also think the secret is Saba. His gratitude for every single day was his secret. The way he appreciated and found joy in every little bit of this life was his secret. The way he went through really hard, amazing things was his secret, and never once complained. He found joy and beauty everywhere. He became an artist in his 90s and took such pride in his ability to preserve the beauty he saw. He just wanted to share it. He wrote prolific letters from aboard his cruises, always sprinkled with his sense of humor and the twinkle in his eye, and always with us as his audience in mind. We spoke to him almost every day on the phone, and it would always start the same way. He would say, "Oh, what a beautiful day it is." Even when it wasn't, he made it beautiful. He really loved life, and he really loved his family. Family is everything, he would say to us, and he was right. But also, Saba, you were everything. Sorry. Last sentence. We are now tasked with the incredible honor of continuing your beautiful legacy, and I really hope we do you proud. Sorry, I wanted to say something too.
I made an acrostic poem about Saba by me. So loving and so kind, amazing Saba, best great-grandpa ever, awesome painter.
Beautiful. That was great. That was great. We're going to continue with Orly.
When I was in college, the famous New England autumns would start to change, and Sab and I would send each other leaves in the mail. We would each try to send the most vibrant ones we could find from the maples and ash trees that we both passed by in our respective walks. I would take the leaves to my wall. and when I would look at them, I would know that they were special to him, and so they were special to me. Okay, sorry. I practiced this a lot. Saba taught me to love trees. Growing up, he would buy us trees to plant in our yard. It would always be a special day when he would come over and plant them with us. As we grew up and had kids of our own, we kept that tradition alive. Each of my kids has a tree in our yard from him, and we call them the Saba trees. I think he had such a strong connection to the trees because he appreciated what they gave back, their selflessness. And that's what Saba was to me. He was someone who was always giving his love, his warmth, his sincere curiosity, his wisdom. He was quite literally the most amazing man I've ever met. And I'm gonna miss his leaf letters, his hi Orleys when we talk on the phone, his cap-locked emails, and his smile on his face every time I would see him. Saba, thank you for being the best grandfather, father, great-grandfather, and a husband anyone could ever ask for. Thank you for teaching me to live freely, love fiercely, and always and adventure passionately. You are my forever role model. Do you want to say something? No, you just want to be up here. Okay. Adam, do you want to say something? No? Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to call on Eitan.
Don't have any kids to really help me over here, so yeah. First, I would like to thank you all for coming to celebrate Herb's life. He was truly amazing, and just thank you. He was taken too soon from us. I mean that with all seriousness, as we need someone in our lives who was as positive, kind, caring, and strong as Saba. I looked up to him as a way to live my life as a father figure. He had to be that strong with the love of his life, Sherry. She was a strong-willed and fierce woman, but as loving as can be. Fierce woman. Sherry was a fierce and loving woman. Sherry and Herb were their true yin and yang couple. They were the perfect balance. His love for family, curiosity, and life was inspiring. Saba was a true role model. With his love of his life, revolving around family, he was involved in all of our lives and made us the people we are today. He'd always say how lucky we are to have family that we do. But we are lucky to be surrounded by Saba, by the person he was, and Sherry. Saba and I were lucky enough to travel together spending 7 days, just the two of us. We learned a lot about his adventures, his love of life, his curiosity, lifelong learner. He lived life to the fullest and a life filled with learning. Saba, we are all going to miss you so much, and we will keep the family strong. Family is everything.
Now we're going to hear from Avi.
So I'm actually going to start off with something that my older sister Yael wrote. She couldn't make it because just 6 weeks ago, Saba's 14th great-grandchild was born. And what? Oh, louder? Sorry. So Yael's, my oldest sister, couldn't make it because her son Dvir was born 6 weeks ago, and he was Saba's 14th great-grandchild. So this is what she wrote. On February 6, 2011, Saba emailed, probably everyone in this room, Dear family and friends, yesterday was the day of infamy, South Pacific style. Shosh and I boarded a small boat at Rogatoga, Cook Islands to sightsee and meet the natives. When we returned to the high waves, were unmistakable. 6 sailors were assisting people to make a leap of faith as they boarded the ship. I can just picture the obituary in the Chicago Tribune. Herb Rosen killed boarding the luxury cruise ship Serenade in the South Pacific. What could be a better way to die? If I didn't make it, and Western prizes would get my remains, they should have difficulty removing this big smile from my face. Fortunately, Saba enjoyed many more adventures on the luxury cruises liner. But I think that we can say that even now, Saba died with a smile on his face. But what were his secrets of life? I think there may be many, but two main ones that I identify are gratitude to him. Saba was gracious and thankful towards everyone around him. For favors big and small, his appreciation was full of warmth, enthusiasm, and sincerity. Even the previous email ends with, "We are so lucky and grateful to such a caring crew of the ship." His curiosity led him to many adventures at sea and on land, but also to conversations with everyone he encouraged and the thirst of knowledge. Once, when I called him on my way home from work, he said, "It's so wonderful to hear your voice." I told him I was driving on the new tunnel highway that leads from Jerusalem, which I knew he would get a kick out of. He did and asked with excitement, "Did they build it using Swiss technology?" Of course, Saba was up to date on the newest methods of carving tunnels through the mountains and interested how the Jerusalem tunnel was constructed. Back to gratitude. I am so thankful for all the times I had with Saba. Our cruises and travels, quality time, Chicago, and adventures around Israel. I'm especially thankful that he got to form a relationship with Josh, Yael's husband, that we got to cry together when I called, telling him that Dvir was born, and that he got to have a few video calls with Dvir over the past 6 weeks. I will miss him so much. Saba, you are such an inspiration to us. In your words and in capital letters, you were not just, as you probably all know, double wowie. You were more than a triple wowie. You lived the beautiful days in Chicago. We and all of our fans who knew you through us have never seen anything like it. Our times together couldn't have been better, and we'll never forget it. We are so lucky. Life is good. We send love, Yael, Josh, and Devere. So I'm just going to add something for myself. It's hard to believe that just a week ago, exactly a week ago, I came in, and that was the last time we saw Saba. One of the first memories I have from you, Saba, is when I, called you over the phone back in the times when there were no cell phones or faxes or internet, telling you that my first tooth fell out. That was when we were still living in Teaneck. Walking in Ra'anana streets in Israel was always hard because you and Safta would always walk slowly, not because you were older, but because every tree, every plant, every flower was so interesting for you, even though that we would see it every day and I never understood what was so interesting. As Yael mentioned, every time calling you on the phone, you were always so happy that we called. Even if you were in the middle of breakfast at the Mather Inn or reading the Wall Street Journal, you'd always say, okay, we'll have to talk a different time. I'm busy now, solving the problems of all the world, of the whole world. And when when you were up for talking, you would right away ask me, well, how's the family? How are the kids? Tell me what's going on. And then once we finished that, you would ask what's going on in Israel. What do you think about the President of the United States? And then you tell me what's going on with Russia, China, or any other country in the world. You taught us what it means to take care of the other, and especially your wife, Safta, how you loved and took care. Your emails are something that we're all going to miss. It was just an everyday notice from you that everything's okay, and you're there sending emails, breaking news from Arutz Sheva, one of the Israeli news channels. Even though we've heard the same news in Israel, I don't know how many hours before, but still heard about them was, always something to know Saba's there and Saba's okay, and just to hear from you. Your inspiration and your great-grandchildren, as I said, 14 of them that here in the States and also in Israel, who didn't have the chance to see you every day, but did have a chance to meet you last year for your 100th birthday. Just want to know how much they love you and admire you, even though they live 6,000 miles away. And to the end, but you always told us family is everything. And we will continue that, keep united, and love each other. We will continue everything that you taught us, your Henry, all the things that you told us were important, and fight for justice and what's for right. And Sabna, in the personal aspect, we talked about what it was to be a soldier. And to fight for what's right. And during this time, Saba, that our country is in war. And yes, as you know, I left the house on October 7th. I promise you, we will continue fighting for what's right. And for and continue whatever you taught us, the way the world should be a better place.
Now I'm going to call on Yonatan, who also came from Israel.
עוד ינובון בשיבה דשנים ורעננים יהיו. They will continue to produce in their old age, fresh and full of sap they will be. One of my rabbis once said that an old person is someone who does not get excited and surprised anymore. If that is correct, then Saba was not old. In fact, he was probably the youngest adult I knew. I wrote that 11 years ago, we celebrated Saba's 90th birthday in Ra'anana, Israel. And without planning, we all spoke about trees. Means I could have wrote that also today we all spoke about trees, again without planning. And why? Because, as Avi said, as Orly said, walking with us in the streets with Saba is you stop and look at every tree. And why? Because it's exciting to see trees, even though you saw them 100 times before. But Saba would get excited from those things. Saba would also get excited from the construction in Ra'anana. And we would stop by and look at their different buildings, and he would say, wow, this is amazing, even though the construction, at least I didn't think was so impressive. Saba would not take these small things for granted and would get excited every time he saw them. Saba's excitement grew to another level when he was about family. Every time I called, he answered the phone with excitement and straight away asked how Nami and the kids were trying so hard to pronounce their names correctly. Then in great excitement, he would ask how work was going or what's happening in the world, etc. Odia Nuvun Beseva. Even in his old age, he was an example of how to stay young, productive, and fresh. He was excited about the small things in life, like trees and Ra'anana, and the important things in life, like family or Israel. He loved life for being life, a perfect match for a man called Chaim, life. As a person who loved life, it was obvious for him to also give life. Saba gave us life. Thank you, Saba, for choosing us and our kids as your grandchildren. Thank you for being our Saba. We love you and we miss you.
A lot of love from the beautiful grandchildren. Now I'm going to call up Barry to say some words about his father.
Dad was Mom's night in shining armor. He saved her from a life of loneliness and hardship and gave her a full life and a wonderful family. At the same time, he saved me. I was almost 3 years old, and I once again had a father. We will soon read the book of Ruth on Shavuot, the holiday of Chesed, loving kindness. Megillat Ruth is the story of Chesed. Among the greatest types of Chesed is saving the Yatom V'Almanah, the orphan and the widow. I can't imagine what my life would have been had he had not married Mom, but he did. And I know how wonderful a life I've had, and for that I'm forever grateful. Dad gave me siblings, a family, an education, a passion for Israel. Dad was a role model for me, of course, for my children, obviously, but amazingly so, also for friends of ours, people who barely met him or simply heard about our stories of him. What struck us and others was his positive outlook on life, his love of people, his undaunted curiosity, and his passion for learning new things. He would stop and appreciate the beauty of a tree or yell out, oh, 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 and we would think something was wrong, but it was simply that he saw a pretty flower. He would also get excited to see trucks on the road, his sign of economic growth, or cranes at work building new buildings in Israel. I reported to him recently that from our porch, I could see 14 cranes just in Ra'anana. He taught us by example. He didn't lecture us. You have to appreciate trees. He just showed us. He planted trees everywhere. He lived. Trees are in most of his artwork. Not just love of trees did we learned from his example, but also how to treat others. We saw how he treated the women who worked in his office with respect and friendship. We saw how he related to people at the Mather and how he related to Cindy Muldoon as part of our family, how he spoke with his caretakers who came every day to care for him this past year. I have the email he sent on January 3rd, the subject of which, all in capital letters, of course, Grace, my new friend from Nigeria. Somehow, it's always a beautiful day in Chicago. And when it rains, it's also good because the farmers need it. And winter is good because then there's spring, and what can be better than seeing buds on the trees? His optimism was unparalleled. Shortly after October 7th, he told me, Barry, things will get better. I've been around 100 years, and I've witnessed a lot. It will get better. And since then, with the hostages still not home, our soldiers still at war, and the situation seeming worse, I remind myself of Dad's words. Despite the distance, my children and grandchildren felt close to Dad, Saba, Saba Rabba. The visits, the frequent phone calls, even a Zoom 101st birthday party last week, all kept the relationship close. But it is true, we marveled at his relationship with Josh and Daniel and the Gorb kids. They were with him. They were there with him. They were part of his daily life, especially Shosh and Daniel, the best sister and brother-in-law I can imagine. They cared for him constantly, convinced him to move to the Mather, included Dad in most everything, even in Durman family events and get-togethers with even their friends. There's no question that our life in Israel was easier thanks to all the care they gave Dad here in the U.S. We are forever grateful to them. After speaking with Rabbi Schwab yesterday at Bethel, we looked at the new sanctuary, or the revamped sanctuary. I realized that where I like to sit in our synagogue in Israel, sort of middle on the right, is where Dad and Mom always liked to sit. When Dad would come to Israel, he wouldn't bring the Grisham book that to Shul, as he was known to do in the United States, but he brought his army-issued prayer book, worn out from lots of years of use. He was a deeply believing person. He would call up and say, "You know, Barry, prayer works." He repeated that phrase often, prayer works, especially after the birth a few months ago, just before Pesach, of Yael's baby and our most recent grandson. Dad was certain that someone up there listened to his prayers and answered him. He, or maybe it's a she, he would say, always looked out for him. Dad would say, how else could he explain how wonderful his life was? A fantastic wife and children and family and friends and places to live and so many experiences. Life is good, he would say. He loved life learning new things and appreciating the world around him. And the love he felt from family and friends, he said it often, and he said it to the very end, life is good.
Now I'm going to call on Barry's wife, Judy, to say some words.
I apologize if a few things repeat themselves. We obviously didn't plan all this together, except certain themes are just Herb. This past Shabbat, Barry and I sponsored the Kiddush at our Shul Minyan in honor of Dvir, our newest grandson, and Herb, who had just celebrated his 101st, in honor of the youngest and the oldest members of the family. In essence, it was a celebration of family. This theme was certainly suited to Herb, who, on the cards that he himself had illustrated and painted, wrote, "Family is everything." Indeed, among the major pillars of Herb's life was his interest in and his devotion to family. This was clearly evident in the times he spent with the Chicago family, with a mutual and reciprocal devotion. This was also evident in the more infrequent but amazingly special times with his Israel family, including his 8 Israeli great-grandchildren, from Benayah, for whom he was the sandak at Benayah's Brit, and Sarah, when Herb was with us over that Shabbat, when Yonatan and Naomi left for the hospital for her to give birth, and he celebrated her birth with us, and all the others, all but 2 of whom he was privileged to meet, down to Dvir, not quite 7 weeks old, who was indisputable proof to Herb, as Barry just said, that prayer works. Last week, we celebrated Herb's 100th birthday with most of the Israeli contingent on Zoom, and the kids were just so excited. Saba Rabba, as they called him, was really, really important to them, even if they didn't see each other very often. Herb's devotion to family went far beyond the definition of immediate family, of spouse, parents, and kids. One example was his connection to the Lewis family when he married Shari. He was very connected to all of them, and this connection continues to this day. This, of course, was a tribute to Shari, but a major tribute to Herb, who, for his part, saw this as a natural connection. They were just his family. And from the perspective of a daughter-in-law, I was just truly blessed to have Herb as my father-in-law. Family lore has it that Herb chose me. I'm not sure if this is a little bit of revisionist history because he had also told Barry, never marry a girl from New York. But he was truly an incredible father-in-law, always interested in what I was doing professionally, whom I was meeting, what we were discussing. Could I possibly share some of his ideas with them and bounce some ideas off the higher-uppers that I might be seeing at work? He was also interested in what I was cooking, what I was baking, joining me in my trips to the supermarket. He was incredibly generous with gifts, including those from catalogs, cruises, and Costco, but far beyond, just because he wanted to give. And he was always so supportive. And beyond his interest in me, he would always ask about my family and evinced amazing concern for all of them, and repeatedly. In one sense, this was just natural for him because he was interested in everything, everyone and everything. But his devotion to family was just immeasurable. This devotion was so strong, almost palpable, and I, Herb's daughter-in-law, was among the many people privileged to enjoy that. That experience and privilege is an example for us all and something for which I will always be grateful.
Now I'm going to call on his daughter, Shosh, to say some words as well.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Schwab, and thank you, David Jacobson, for all of your support, and obviously thank everybody for being here. How would I start my morning? You would say, "It's a beautiful day in Chicago." That booming voice would say it as I checked in with every morning at 7 o'clock on my way to work. And yes, albeit a downpour, freezing snow, bright sunny day, he was the true optimist, a dreamer, a schemer, painter, writer, dentist, father, husband, and friend. He maintained a code of conduct that was both humble and strong. At times he was quiet, a lot of times because of my mom, but he was passionate about work, family, Israel, politics, you've heard. But in his third memoir called Follow the North Star, which Yael compiled for us, she compiled all of his writings, he said, the most important lesson of a Boy Scout is to follow the North Star, because then you know where you're going. It makes sense. But finding the North Star, he said, is fundamental. It ensures for your safety and for your, and obviously how to return home. And he said, his quotes, I have always used this as a symbol in my life. He writes, the North Star is a symbol of that safety. And these are the fundamentals. Obviously, stay the course. Though it seems that there were occasions that he kind of went off course. For example, stated in his book, stealing the mail clerk's motor scooter while stationed in the San Diego Naval Training Center in 1949. He was then caught by the executive officer. I don't know if you knew this. He was and told as a result of that action, he would be shipped off to the USS Woodby naval ship. And that was going to be his new home. But wanderlust set in, and he said, you know what? That turned out to be the greatest adventure in my life. So maybe we should all steal motor scooters. Well, of course, the other way maybe he went off course was Barry and I never liked to go on roller coasters. And luckily, my dad did. So there we are, either at an amusement park. He would be the one that would say, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take the kids." Once we went on a water slide. I didn't realize it, but it was a 90-degree water slide. He, of course, again, volunteered to go with both of our kids. On their return, I said, "Dad, how was it?" He goes, "Instant enema." So I was glad that we didn't have to go, Barry. Sorry. But this is how he led his life. A walk, as you've heard, always involved stopping. Exiting the plane from a wintry Chicago to Florida, he we were mandated to hug a palm tree. Had to. And when I asked my friends, like, okay, when you go to Florida, do you have to hug a palm tree? No, but he made us hug a palm tree, and ever since then, we do too. But obviously, Israel was central in his life. In 1951, when he was there in 1951, and his first visit, he visited a kibbutz, and he was having breakfast, and he reached for a hard-boiled egg. His hand got slapped, and he said, no, Herb, those are for the children. And I think that's why he marveled at Israel now, that upstart nation. Here it was, he saw Israel at its inception, almost at its inception, and now how he loved seeing Israel as an amazing, as our country, and all the things that it did. He was both active in AIPAC and Washington Institute. He volunteered on the kibbutz as a dentist. On his last day on this earth, Sunday, what did he do? He was wearing his Free the Hostages necklace, and he was watching a science movie. He was also a very willing participant in our family shenanigans. The Tyvek paintball party, the Costco party, Eitan's Olympics. He didn't get slapped with a hanging the salami. He actually, and the advice that he would give to our children were sometimes kind of interesting. Eitan's on his way to college, he wrote a beautiful, heartfelt letter to Eitan, and at the end he said, "Honey, just don't fuck up." I think you still have it, Eitan. What could we do? What would you like us to know, Dad? Cherish family, take care of your friends, be active politically, love the United States, and certainly love Israel. So my everyday North Star was you, Dad. Our days began together and ended together, be it via calls or visits, and intimacy of care. You have always been there for us and for our family, and for that we're eternally grateful. Popping into the Mather, I could be greeted by our amazing Grace, Temi, and Tosin, whose loving care was extraordinary, and to whom we are obviously incredibly indebted to you. Thank you. I would hear, show us your, here, come here, tell me about the work, your kids, school in Michigan. And he would patiently listen, and then he'd say, you know what? I have this crazy idea. And it really ended up not being so crazy. As his daughter, Danielle, and I felt privileged to learn and hear his stories. I know, living to 101, we hear, okay, well, he lived to 101, so okay. But he lived 101, and so we got to have him for that long. And that's part of how we'll be missing, because he was so much a part of our lives. And you know, you look out and we see so many different people from different areas of our life, people who knew him well and people who were touched. You can't even know how much it means to us and to our family to have you all here. So he loved us so passionately, and we love you, Dad, even harder. Thank you. Thank you.
One of my favorite teachings in Judaism is expressed as a Jewish law by Maimonides, who says that everyone was to greet one another with a sever panim yafot, a smiling countenance. Today we come to celebrate the life of Herb Rosen, who among many outstanding qualities, to me, always exemplified this teaching. He seemed to always be smiling, somehow always positive or constructive, even in the face of personal or global or Jewish challenges. And he amazingly held that secret to finding a way to always make the person with whom he was interacting feel better about themselves after a conversation with him. He lived gratitude and love for his family most of all, love for his country, which he served proudly, and love for Israel and the Jewish people. which is why it is so meaningful and appropriate to who he was, that at his funeral, when we honor his life, it's being held on Yom Yerushalayim, the day we celebrate Jerusalem and its reunification. Simply put, he was a wonderful man. He led a wonderful life, and he will be sorely missed by all. It is my sad honor to extend my condolences and those of his longtime synagogue community at NSS Bethel, to his dear family, his loving children, Barry and Judy, as well as Shosh and Daniel, to his beloved grandchildren, Matan, Tali, Orly, Eitan, Yael, Avi, and Yonatan, all of whom you heard from, and his cherished 14 great-grandchildren. And to all of his family and friends, that's you and so many people who aren't here today, my prayer is that the words we share and the traditions we observe provide us with some measure of comfort at a difficult time. We heard the most important words. Those were from the family. I just want to add a quick few highlights of his life and a couple personal thoughts, because I also knew Herb for the last 20 years. As many of you know, but maybe some of you don't, he was born in St. Louis. He moved around a lot to Chicago, in Chicago, California, and back. I was told that as a child, he was close with his family, and he was a proud Eagle Scout. He went to the U of I. He enlisted in 1943, and he was given the opportunity to study, and he chose the specialty of dentistry. And you told the story, Shosh, as to why he ended up in the Pacific, but that is where he ended up on the Navy and the USS Whidbey. He was really proud of his service. You all know that. And he had a lot of respect for those who served in the armed forces today, and he really loved this country. He also loved that he was able to travel the world with the Navy, and he always held a love for boats and water throughout his whole life. I was told he was very proud that on cruises and boat trips, he never got seasick. He was a true sailor. In honor of his love for the Navy, one of his grandchildren's middle name, if I got that right, is Whidbey, after the Navy vessel upon which he served. I thought that was amazing. When he returned to the States to Great Lakes, he began to set up a private practice. The family told me that he saw one day an ad to somebody was looking for a dentist to set up a practice in Worth, Illinois. Guess what? So he set up a practice in Worth, Illinois. And that's where he began his private practice as a dentist. His family was also proud of the fact that even once the family moved to the north suburbs, he kept his practice there, traveling that distance out of loyalty to his patients and his staff, whom he treated with the greatest generosity and kindness, as we all imagine they were treated. He was an excellent dentist, and we have to remember that he helped countless people over the years that he practiced. Now, 1956 was one of the most important years of Herb's life, for it was then that he met Sherry. The story is told that on their first date in January, he picked her up with snowflakes in his hair, white scarf around his neck, and she thought he was so handsome. They fell in love very, very fast. They had an amazing relationship. They derived such happiness from life together, and as you heard, balanced each other very beautifully. He also took amazing care of Sherry in her final years, giving up much of his other activities and social life to be by her side. His dedication to her and her love for her was very special. Perhaps, maybe, there's some consolation that the family feels that they're together again. You already heard from the family what an amazing father, grandfather, Saba, and a great-grandfather, Saba Rabba, he was. I just want to share a little of my perspective as I got to know him over the last 20 years. As I stated, Herb was a true lover of the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and I had such deep respect for his dedication. I saw him at all the AIPAC policy conferences that he could attend, and all around at all the different events for the Washington Institute, and he also supported JUF and Ramah, among many other organizations. But he was also very engaged in the issues that affected the Jewish people. You all probably got these, but he sent articles to people all the time, myself included, and the ones sent to me were almost always about different important issues on which he wanted me to be educated. Then he would ask my opinion about them, or sometime make a request for me to take a leadership role in one thing or another. If you wanted to know what was going on in the Jewish world, just ask Herb. He also took on certain leadership roles in establishing JUF's Right On program, for example, bringing young people to Israel to learn about contemporary Israel and how to be a better advocate. As was mentioned, he was a regular at Bethel, and he used to sit on the right side of the sanctuary, like basically right in front of the rabbi's podium. It was great to see him there. He always had something good to read, and he also found the sanctuary a very peaceful place sometimes. The family knows what that means. I loved talking to him at Kiddush, where he'd always say something complimentary to me. I'm sure he did it to everyone. That's who he was. He gave me his big smile, and then he would engage me on one topic or another. As I told the family, for some reason, I just loved the cadence and the tone of his voice and the positive way that he would talk, even when he was concerned about something. He always left me feeling better about myself and the state of the world after the conversation. And I didn't tell the family this. I always thought to myself, he must have been a great doctor. He's probably an amazing dad and grandfather and a friend to anyone who had the pleasure to know him. I truly have the greatest respect for Herb, and I pray that his memory will always be a blessing to us all. So whether you remember him for the little things, like the fact that he can name the species of any tree, that he knew every country and the world's flag, that he loved Costco, that he loved giving gifts to everyone in his trademark brown paper bag, or the big things, that he had such an amazing breadth of knowledge, that he remained an eternal optimist, that he had such internal strength to persevere to live to 101, and never complained through all of the issues, that he was a lifelong learner, never losing his curiosity, staying sharp until the very end, his deep love for the Jewish people in Israel, or his incredible, ever-present love for his amazing family. Let us always remember Herb with respect, affection, and a smile on our faces. Yeh zichro baruch. May his memory always be for a blessing, and let us all say, Amen. If you'll kindly stand if you're able as I recite the memorial prayer in his memory. El malei rachamim, shochen b'amromim, hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, b'malot kiddoshim utorim, kezohar harakia mazirim et nishmat Chaim Nachum ben Lev v'Fega, shalach li'olamo, b'gan eden tzei menuchato, ana bal harachamim, hastireu b'seiter kanafecha li'olamim, utzror b'tzror Chaim et nishmato, Adonai onachalato, v'yanuch b'shalom amishkavo, v'nomar amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence. Among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Chaim Nachum ben Lev v'Fega, Herb Rosen, is gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. May you rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Can the pallbearers kindly step forward? Yoshev v'seitel yom etzel shadai lonan. Omar l'adonai maksim etzudati Elohai avtach bo. Gu yitzilcha mipach yakush medever avot. Vevrato yasech lach v'tach knafav techzeh. Tzina v'sochera b'mitzo. Otira mitbach ha'lailach lechetzi ufyuman. Midever ba'ofo yaloch miketev yeshut zorayim. Yipol mitzlecha elef u'ruman u'minecha. Elecha lo yigash.